Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating piece of political commentary that creates this unexpected but brilliant bridge between three massive topics. We're talking global nuclear threats, U.S. economic realities, and believe it or not, our daily digital habits. We're going to break down the claims, the counterclaims, and the analysis exactly as they were laid out in the source material.
It's a massive question, isn't it? When global conflict strikes, whose interests are really driving the decisions behind the scenes? In this explainer, we'll unpack a recent debate centered around former President Donald Trump's statements on foreign military action and the critical response from Representative Ro Khanna and political commentators. We'll look impartially at both the stated justifications for these foreign conflicts and the argued realities of their domestic impact.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll hit 1, the nuclear threat, 2, alliances and foreign policy, 3, oil markets and economics, take a quick detour into 4, the screen time epidemic, and wrap up with 5, assessing American interests.
Let's jump right in with Section 1, the nuclear threat. This whole debate in our source material really kicks off with a statement from former President Donald Trump. He justified a hardline stance by saying, "We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. There'd be no Israel, there'd be no Middle East, there'd be no Europe." The commentary points out how he's basically suggesting that nations like France and the Netherlands face immediate existential destruction if military action isn't taken right away.
But Representative Ro Khanna pushes back pretty hard on this framing. You've got this claim of an imminent threat to Europe on one hand, but Khanna's analysis lays out a completely different reality. He points out that Iran actually doesn't have intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, capable of reaching beyond the Middle East. Plus, while they definitely have enriched uranium, they just don't have a fully developed nuclear weapon ready to deploy like that.
In fact, Khanna argues something really interesting here. He says past U.S. military actions might have accidentally incentivized Iran to speed up their nuclear program. I mean, think about it from their perspective. Their enriched uranium is still sitting there intact, but their conventional deterrents, their Navy and Air Force, have been absolutely decimated, and relatives of their leaders have been targeted. So the analysis suggests that right now, Iran might see building a nuke as literally their only leverage left.
Moving right along to Section 2, alliances and foreign policy.
The source material spends a good chunk of time digging into the why behind all this regional involvement. And the hosts zero in on this remarkably candid quote from the former president. When talking about military involvement against Iran, he said, "We're doing it to help Israel, and to help Saudi Arabia, and to help Qatar and UAE and, Kuwait." The commentators were just stunned by this. They saw it as a straight-up admission that U.S. military action is being run explicitly as a favor to foreign allies.
Which brings up a pretty huge question. Is the U.S. actually controlling its own foreign policy or just starting wars for other governments? The source material frames it like this. The U.S. could be fighting a massive regional war carrying huge risks, but getting zero domestic benefit for the American people, essentially just operating on the talking points of foreign leaders. And the situation on the ground is even messier. The commentary draws a really sharp line between the rulers of these Gulf states and the people actually living there. Sure, leaders in places like Saudi Arabia or the UAE might quietly cheer on actions against Iran, but the folks on the street? Totally different story. The source points out these populations are horrified by the events in Gaza, they broadly want a Palestinian state, and they are completely opposed to civilian casualties in Iran, like the killing of schoolgirls. The analysis basically says U.S. involvement is just alienating the American government from everyday people across the Middle East.
That brings us to Section 3, oil markets and economics.
Now, how does a geopolitical conflict thousands of miles away actually hit your wallet? Well, the source tackles this big claim about American energy independence. Trump claimed that because the U.S. outproduces Saudi Arabia and Russia combined, we don't even need the Strait of Hormuz open. But Representative Khanna completely rejects that. The reality, he explains, is that because the U.S. exports oil, we are totally locked into a global market.
To put that into perspective, just look at this massive number, 20%. That is the chunk of the entire world's trade flowing right through the Strait of Hormuz. You literally cannot choke off a fifth of global commerce without feeling the shockwaves back home.
And those shockwaves absolutely hammer the American consumer. If that strait closes, global supply tanks and prices spike. Suddenly, a guy in Youngstown, Ohio is paying way more at the gas pump. Fertilizer gets stuck in transit, which drives up your food prices at the grocery store. And here's the real kicker. Because inflation spikes from these costs, the Federal Reserve can't cut interest rates, so your mortgage and credit card rates stay painfully high. The commentary argues that jumping into these foreign conflicts is essentially a betrayal of the American worker's wallet.
All right, pivot time. Section 4, the screen time epidemic. Yeah,
It's a wild twist right in the middle of all this heavy geopolitical talk, but the source material goes there. You might be wondering, how on earth does my phone fit into global oil markets? Well, think about it. When we are constantly bombarded with news about nuclear threats and supply chain collapses, what is the very first thing we do? We doom scroll.
The source drops this crazy statistic. The average American checks their phone over 200 times a day. That equates to roughly 5 hours of daily screen time, just staring at your mobile device. We are practically hardwired into the anxiety of the global news cycle.
To combat this, the commentary introduces a concept with a bit of a wink, honestly, the brain rot index. Promoted by the Noble Mobile Life app, it's a playful but very real metric designed to track how often you pick up your phone and monitor that excessive doom scrolling. It forces you to confront just how much of your day is being eaten up by that screen.
The ad read in the source outlines a pretty straightforward way to break the cycle. Step 1, download the app. Step 2, keep your brain rot index under 100. Step 3, connect to Wi-Fi to save mobile data. And Step 4, the sweet part. Users can actually earn up to $100 cash back just for using their phones less. The underlying message here? Reclaim your attention. Spend less time stressing over global crises you can't control on social media and more time doing things in the real world that actually bring you joy.
Bringing it all home with Section 5, Assessing American Interests.
Zooming back out to the big picture, Representative Khanna asks a really foundational question. Why is the United States inserting itself into a multi-generational Shiite-Sunni regional conflict? The analysis points out these are ancient rivalries that just do not serve direct American interests. In fact, during their debate, the source highlighted breaking news showing even the Saudis expressed they didn't want the war to continue, which further complicates the narrative that the U.S. absolutely has to step in on their behalf.
Ultimately, the source draws a thick line in the sand between two distinct concepts. On one side, you have offensive wars, which they view as unacceptable. That's when the U.S. adopts a foreign leader's talking points to start a fight that offers zero domestic benefit. But on the other side, you have defensive alliances, operating within established agreements like NATO, which are strictly set up for mutual defense, not going out and proactively picking fights in foreign regions.
So that leaves us with this final, provocative thought to chew on today based on the analysis. Should foreign policy be dictated by what our allies want, or strictly by what benefits the folks right here at home? It's a delicate balancing act, and as we've explored today, the downstream ripple effects of these massive geopolitical decisions end up splashing right back onto our gas pumps, our grocery bills, and yep, even the screens we're holding in our hands. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you on the next.